in the Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible, volume 1, page 817, it tells us that El or Elohim simply means demon. That's right. Notice this. In the Old Testament, daimonism, a daimon, the Hebrew equivalent, and this is kind of like under the heading of demon, like you're looking up for what demon means, okay? In this dictionary. It's notice what it says, the Hebrew equivalent of demon, daimon, in the original sense is simply El or Elohim, commonly rendered God. Do you see that? Israel originally viewed the deities like El or Elohim as demonic. That's what the dictionary is saying. That was when they used to pronounce Yahweh's name and knew that the surrounding nations, these surrounding heathen nations, worshipped the devil. Yahweh had only revealed himself and his laws to only one nation, and that was Israel. And he did not want his truth and his way of life to be corrupted. This is why Yahweh instructed them not to even pronounce the names of the heathen gods. It's just amazing. Yahweh told them not to even pronounce the name of the heathen gods. And that's exactly what they're doing. Notice this instruction in Exodus 23 verse 13. Exodus 23 verse 13. It says, "In all things I have said to you, be careful to do them. And make no mention of the name of hinder gods, Elohim. Neither let it be heard from your mouth." I mean, can you be more specific than that? But this is exactly what they did. These were the same deities that Yahweh commanded Israel not to worship. And I want you to notice this in Leviticus 20 verse 23. "And you must not walk according to the customs of the nations that I am going to drive out before you." In Deuteronomy 12 verse 30 and 31, it says, "Be careful not to be ensnared into following them by asking about their gods, Elohim, saying, how do these nations serve their gods? What festivals do they keep? Do they keep Valentine's with Cupid and all that? Well, I will do the same." This is exactly what they did. You know, notice what Harper's dictionary states on page 253. It says, "The accommodation of El worship." You see that? El worship or God worship. Because that's what El Elohim means, God. By Yahwehism. You see, there was a distinction. The accommodation of El worship by Yahwehism was a remarkable occurrence. For Israel was, as a rule, hostile to the cults of Canaanite gods and goddesses. And you can see why they were hostile, because Yahweh had instructed them not to learn their ways, not to learn how they worship their gods. Okay, that's where the hostility came from. With this one act, Satan was able to get the only nation in the world that knew Yahweh to worship Satan instead in the form of Elohim or God, just like every other nation on the face of the earth was doing and is still doing today. Only the prophets who Yahweh would send to warn Israel remained faithful to Yahweh, while the entire nation went astray into God worship, started by this removal of Yahweh's name. There are many Jews who are not aware that Elohim and Adoni are the actual names of heathen gods. You know, that's astounding. But this is simply an historical fact. Just like Christopher Columbus discovered America whenever it says he discovered it. These are not originally Hebrew words, but they're thinking that they are. Even the Christian scholar Merrill M. Hunger knew this. In Unger's Bible Dictionary, It tells us this on page 412. In Canaan, there was a tendency to employ the plural forms of deities, like the singular Astoreth, Astaroth, Asherah, Asherim, Aneth, Anathoth, to summarize all the various manifestations of the deity. You see, these deities had multiple personalities. You see, that's where we get the concept of the Trinity from. You know, the pagans, that's how their gods are structured, right? They have different personalities. You know, and as you know, the Trinity, the teaching of the Trinity is that you have the God, the Father, the Son, God the Son, and then God the Holy Spirit. You see, that concept comes from paganism, as you're seeing here. In like fashion, the Canaanite plural Elohim, gods, was adopted by the Hebrews to express all the excellences and attributes of the one true God. You see? But Yahweh is not a God, and we're going to cover that in detail, my friends. The term God, as you're seeing right here, comes from comes from the Canaanite word Elohim. Okay? In an article entitled "The Myth and Cult of Adonis," you know, and you can find this on Phoenicia.org. It confirms what we just read here in Unger's Bible Dictionary, but it gives a little bit more information on the word Adonai. Here's the quote. When Jews encounter the consonants of Yahweh, YHWH or Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, in prayer, they pronounce it Adonai. Okay? And notice what they say here. They might be shocked to learn that this substitution word is related to the Phoenician Adon and Adonis. Further, Muslims, Jews, and Arabic-speaking Christians might be shocked also to learn that their words for God came from the Phoenician god's name El. See, it's all related, as in Elah or Allah, and there's a whole slew of them. Okay, also in the same quote, but we didn't include it here. The Jews should be shocked because Yahweh in the Torah stated clearly, as we read before in Exodus 23 verse 13, make no mention of the name of hinder gods, Elohim, neither let it be heard from your mouth. This command in Exodus 23 verse 13 is broken every time one calls on Adonai, Elohim, Lord or God instead of Yahweh. You see? The same article also went on to state that, gives us a little bit information about Adonis here. It says, Adonis is a young fertility god. That's what they're calling on. A young fertility god. A comely youth beloved by Astarte, which is another god. And you see, these gods had relationships. Okay? We'll talk about that another time. And represents death and rebirth in an Oriental vegetation cult. You see? Adonis is derived from the Canaanite title Adon. It is the Semitic word for master or lord. And the I at the end of Adon, Adonis, the I there, means my. It means my. Therefore, Adonai translates as my Lord. Similarly, the meaning of Baal, with whom he shares traits, is also Lord or Master. This practice of substituting Yahweh's name, my friends, was clearly a trick of Satan to cause the people of Yahweh to forget his name. And this is exactly what the prophet Jeremiah rebuked the Hebrew scribes and rabbis for doing. And if you remember what the Century Bible said, this started around after the captivity, after the return from captivity, and before the Christian era. And this is exactly the period in which the prophet Jeremiah did his work.